Hey everybody, welcome back. Sorry it's been a couple weeks since I've been able to stream. Just a lot of either after work events or meetings, and then I've been sick the last couple weeks, and it's hard to stream without a voice. But I'm back, recovered, and ready to go. Um, it is Dr. McDreamy. Thank you, Scott. um, Somebody had asked to see the Sagittarius I just finished and posted up on socials. Here it is in all of its watery glory. So this was fun. It was a good learning piece. One thing I learned really quickly is to not base on MDF because it is not water resistant. So, because you end up using water to do some sanding on the sides to get that smooth. So the bottom of this does not look very good. The top, it hasn't peeled away and it's been a couple of weeks, so I'm hoping we're okay. I'm also not a big fan of the line I got there, but generally pretty solid. Um, this involved a couple different things. Um, One is I cut some plastic acrylic, kind of the same thing I use for like these like mixing pallets, just some clean ones. So I wipe some down with some rubbing alcohol and clean those, and then measured what I needed for a hex side, and then hot glued those together. Once I had those together, I took some instant or fast curing UV resin, and I put a small bead of that along the edge on the inside of the hex base. And I thought that'd be a good way to kind of seal it all in, but you actually can kind of see the line where there's two different kinds of resin. So I either need to try to get less of that next time. I also wish I would have put some like texture or rocks in the water because it looks a little flat. But once once I had that UV resin, I did a resin pour with an epoxy resin. Geode is the brand I used, and I let that cure. The box said 24 hours. I let it cure for 4 or 5 days because every day I'd get home from work and I try to um, the peel the acrylic sheets off, and I was getting a little pull on the resin, and I didn't want to ruin that edge. So I let that sit as long as possible, and then popped the acrylic sheets off. The hardest part was sanding, and so I went from 180 grit to 4000 grit and sanded this as smooth as possible. The lower grits I actually used a power sander, which I'm really glad I did that. Unlike the Spider-Man diorama I did where I did that by hand and that took forever and didn't look good, I got a much smoother straight line this time with a power sander. Um, and then, so once I got all that sanded, I painted the edge of it with an agent called Gauzy Agent, which is a modeling product they use to help like make the canopies look clear and glossy, and then painted the base edge. And then the texturing was done with UV cotton swabs and cotton swabs and UV resin. So I had some UV resin on a paper plate. I'd take some tweezers and run some cotton from a cotton swab in there, and then I'd just kind of sculpt that around to make little waves, and then I'd cure it with a UV flashlight, and then kind of add from there, kind of pulling on it as it was curing to get sharper edges, and then painted some water effects over the top, and then used a product called Water Ripples across the top to give the water some texture, and that was it. Took about a week all in all to get done in like 1 or 2 hour sessions, but it was fun. First time I've done a water base on a mech, second time I've done a water base period, with that Spider-Man vignette being the other one. Learned a bunch, and we'll try it again sometime soon. Really intimidating though, because the miniature from here down could have been completely ruined. Um, so today we're gonna do some decaling. I have decals from Fighting Piranha Graphics. And to start, what we're going to need is a sharp knife. This is a number 11 surgical blade. And then I've got decals, so Gamma Galaxy, Clan Wolf, some numbers, and maybe some hazard stripes. And we don't want to go too crazy with this, but do some. I like to do my decals by letting them get wet on a piece of wet paper towel. This isn't drenched, but it's moist enough. Some people like to gloss varnish their miniatures before decaling. I don't really care for that. The advantage is you can move them around a little more, but then also because the surface tension is lower on that surface, your decals can slide if you're not paying attention. So it's a very niche compliment, Scott. So when I'm decaling, I'm looking around for spots that I think might make good areas for some decal fodder. Um, this up here might be good. This side here might be good, like on that cowl for some logos. And then shins are always a good spot. So we'll probably put like Galaxy logo down here, smaller clan logo here, big one up here, and then maybe some hazards on the back near the jump jets, and a number somewhere. So I like doing this for decals because they don't tend to float away from me in water, and they're a lot easier to control. Kind of where they go. So you just cut decals out, pop them on that paper towel. It'll absorb water in, and it'll loosen the decal up from the paper underneath quite nicely. Anybody out there playing MechWarrior 5 Clans? Oh, cool. I'll have to follow your channel. I know you're streaming, man. I just downloaded on my PlayStation. I might get some time to play today. Although I think my son wants to play some cards, so that might take precedent. But all right. So those are going to sit and kind of soak and get wet for a minute. What we're going to do next is just do a base coat on the dirt. I used mud texture from AK Interactive and put that on last week when I thought I was going to stream, and then wound up still not having a voice. I did make the mistake of loaning my Pro Acryl paint set to a friend who was trying out paints to see what he wanted to do. So I'll try to keep things pretty close. The punchline is that dirt you don't really need to make fancy, you just paint it. So we're going to go for kind of a red-brown like that mahogany, since that was our shadow color, to try and tie the base into the mech. What's left to do for your list? Oh, for subscription? I don't... For Twitch? I think you can subscribe already. You should be able to subscribe. I gotta go read, like, the rules. I think after, like, 10 sessions or something, I can save the videos to Twitch or something. Or I'm not remembering and I'm dumb. So, to get the base coat painted, I've got a old soldier sable brush I've been using for a long time that has long lost its tip despite care, and so I use it for a lot of utility work. So we're just gonna thin down some paint here, a reddish brown, and we're gonna just slop that all over the base. Not being too messy to get it up on the feet yet, because that'd be too powerful. Scott, one thing about me is I don't like reading instructions, so I don't. I need to figure out how to make that work on Twitch. See, what I usually do is just ask somebody that knows. So, like, hey, Seth, what would I need to do to get my Twitch thing better? Alright. So while that's drying, we're going to move on to work on our decals. And so at this stage in the miniature process, a lot of times I'm kind of bouncing between two different things, right? So like that acrylic paint's going to take a few minutes to dry. I really don't want to slow down and just sit and watch paint dry, and I only have the one mini to work on today. So I'm going to move on to the decaling part. Now, like, you can use a lot of different tools to get your decals mounted on your miniature. I just use my brush. And so, you can tell decals are wet enough to work with. And so I'm going to get it away from the paper, get my brush underneath, lift it up, just put it on there. Throw a little water on just to get it tacked down. Oh, can't see what I'm doing. The one thing you have to do is be careful about not touching where you were working, right? Because then you'll just instantly pull your decals way off. Now you could use tweezers or something else. I just find them to be clunky, and I like this better. Sometimes I'll use a knife while it's wet to move it around a little bit. That's a little easier to do when you've got gloss underneath. This has really only had matte varnish on it, so let's put that number on the side of the plasma cannon. Because it won't really stand out anywhere else. You have to be gentle when you're using a knife to move your decals around because you could very easily tear the decal with the blade, so it's just being very delicate. You also don't want to scrape your paint. You want to make sure that decal's wet still too. If it's a dry decal, it's just going to either rip your paint or tear the decal and be a mess. And I think I want some more hazard stripes too, so let's throw these on some weapons. So like, let's go back here. And then let's go over here. That way any elementals that are riding along on our Omnivac don't get near anything that would make them blow up. Happy little elementals. I'm actually going to cut a couple more hazards out to put on the back. Now the trick to getting these to cure really well is a product called Microsol. Some people like using Microset also. I don't, because Microset kind of acts like a glue. So Microset, you paint on the miniature, you apply the decal, you let that dry, then you apply Microsol. I find you don't really need the Microset step, at least for these scale. You might need it for bigger decals. But a couple layers of Microsol does the trick. Now, and basically you see how that decal, you can see the silver, like the shiny edge to it. We don't want to be able to see that, right? We want the decal to look like it's part of the miniature. So you're just going to throw a bunch of Microsol, not Microset, on where you have decals. Be careful not to move your, oh, see, there we go. Be careful not to move your decal. If you do, try to get it back in place. And this will help seal those decals onto the actual miniature so that they're that clear kind of shiny layer on the outside goes away, because even if you gloss over it or if you varnish over that, you'll still see it. And this will also help make the decal look flush. It'll actually dissolve the decal film and just leave the pigment behind. Those decals set pretty quick, or got wet pretty quick, so sorry about the commercial. Now, normally it takes a few layers of the Microsol to do its thing. One thing you want to do, if you have like a decal area that has a big seam going through it is you want your decal to go into that seam, because you really don't want like your decal to not be following like the panel lines of the miniature. That just looks tacky. So I'm using my knife to kind of push this Clan Wolf decal on the shoulder or the cowl into this recess. That way it doesn't look like it's sticking out. Or like going across a detail, right? Like that would be weird. Alright, now our dirt's about dry. So we're going to paint some dirt while this layer of microsol dries. So I'm going to cap my microsol so I don't spill it. Thanks. I might try to get a whole new camera for streaming that doesn't do that, but yeah, I've been looking at some. It's more so convincing the ill wife because it's just more money I'm throwing into the hobby. But I like my EOS M350. I think it takes decent pictures, other than when my lighting is bad. But for streaming, it's not the best because about every 28 minutes it'll freeze, which is annoying for everybody. So I'm going to use a kind of desaturated brown next. We used that mahogany-ish red color for the base color of the dirt. We're going to go for something called walnut. There's a desaturated sienna in the Pro Curl base set that would work really nicely for that. We want our miniature to tie into the basing, and remember we used mahogany as a shadow color, so we're using kind of a reddish-brown, dark reddish-brown mahogany color to kind of create a little bit of you want to make it look like the miniature belongs there, right? So the shading for the whole mini was done in mahogany, so the base dirt is going to be mahogany-esque, so it looks like it exists in the right environment, right? If I shaded the miniature purple, I wouldn't want to paint the base in like bright oranges. So I've got a dry brush here. It's an Artist Opus Series D dry brush. I, for some reason, can't find my scratch pad, which is a really nice tool to be able to dry brush with. I've looked all over the house, and I think I might have chucked it or something, but you don't really need to wipe a lot of paint off for this part of it, because a lot of times we're just going to dab. See what I'm doing there? Let me get this out of there to fix the white balance up. So we're just kind of dabbing paint on. I'm not really dry brushing it on. I'm literally stippling it on. And we're going to go at the feet too. Some of the areas up here. And if the microsol's dry on that decal down there, you can paint some dirt on your decal, right? You want the decal to look like it fits in that space. So it needs shaded. Notice I'm not dry brushing, I'm stippling, or I'm sponging paint on. And then I'm trying to, while it's still wet, wipe it off edges with my finger, so that it looks like dirt's kind of settling into like crevices on the miniature, on the mech's feet, rather than the actual like edges, because the edges would keep wearing paint or wearing dirt off as it's out there trucking along. And looks like our last coat of microsol is dry, so we're going to go back for another coat of microsol while we're hop skip jumping around. We want to try to get like 3 or 4 layers of microsol on here so we can do a little shading on these decals before we're done. Just because, you know, they look kind of like not shaded like the rest of the miniature, which is okay. But if you want it to really blend in. Out of curiosity, how much is that C200, Seth? Wait, seriously? $50 isn't bad. I was thinking I'd have to drop like $1,200 on another camera. I'll have to look at those. That might be a good idea. I don't like that color. Went for kind of a mustardy yellow, and that's way too pungent. So I mix some walnut in there. Let's see if that evens it out a little bit. Yeah. So stippling again, a little less aggressive than we were last layer. Trying to like leave the area under the mech a little darker because, you know, the mech should cast some kind of shadow. Theoretically. You know, I'm no expert on physics and lighting, but no. Unfortunately, that decal shifted and got crooked. It probably got stuck to my finger and I wasn't paying attention, so we'll need to correct that with some paint. But don't worry, we can do that pretty easy. Because it's too locked in now to move. I just kind of pushed it back. We'll see. We'll still need to even out that edge with a line of paint, so... Let's go for a little desaturating gray in there. That'll be it. Again, see how I'm not dry brushing, right? I'm stippling selectively, so I'm creating more texture on my texture rather than just using the texture that's there. And dry brushing isn't a terrible technique, but it kind of creates a lot of artifact, like, and so here kind of see like the different textures of dirt that I've got set up there, so cool. I got my brush clear or clean. I'm gonna go back into that kind of mahogany color and make a wash. And we're going to just slop that all over. Even on the feet. Remember to work quick and try to wipe some of that paint off in excess. Try to prevent it from pooling, unless you want kind of a wet pool effect. I appreciate your help, man. Alright, while that's drying, let's go back at our decals a little bit. Actually, no, let's darken up a little bit more. I threw some dark blue into that mahogany to make kind of a rich purpley color. I'm going to go back kind of where the mech's feet are, just to kind of make a little more shadow in the dirt, so it doesn't look so bright. Alright. Alright, let's go back for our microsol and do another coat, and that should be about it. Yeah, I hope I can get good image resolution with that. I mean, I feel like I get decent image resolution with this EOS, but I'll have to look. One of the cameras, one of the like pro painters suggested to me was like running $1,300. So if I can get one for $100 that does a decent job, then that's an easy sell to the old wife. But alright, so I think it's like our third or fourth coat of microsol, and usually that's all you need. Technically, it needs a few hours to dry though, so be careful mucking around with it, because your decals are kind of fragile while the microsol is still curing. So when you bounce around a lot, you could ruin a decal, which isn't good. But you know, you learn by doing and learn by practice and get comfortable with it, and you can kind of figure out where you can push it a little too much, maybe, which I like to do, because I like to work kind of quick when I can. So. I don't know what PTZ means. What's that mean? PTZ camera? Oh, pan tilt. Okay, cool. I'll have to check that stuff out. I know very little about all these things, so. You'll notice our dirt got a little too muddy, so to speak. We lost some of our highlights. That's okay. Remember, anytime you like do a glaze or a wash, you're going to kind of pull everything together, and it's always good to kind of go back and redo a little bit of separation just to try and help things look a little more independent or unique. So I took our most recent highlight color, and I'm just going to add a few more little dots. all that's left to do for the base is paint the rim. Same way. Nothing fancy to clean the dry brush with. You know, the bristles get beat up a little more, so they need a little extra care. But these Artist Opus brushes are pretty resilient. It's expensive because you got to order them from Britain, but they're pretty good dry brushes. And they've got a great tutorial on dry brushing that kind of changed how I do it. And I could demo it if I could find that stupid scratch pad, but I can't find my scratch pad. So you can always make your own scratch pad, but I like the fancy MDF one. Yeah, those are nice. I mean, but basically the whole concept there is you don't use paper towel to get your dry brush dry. You really are dry brushing with wet paint. You're using the MDF to limit the amount of paint that's on the brush and to work it into the bristles. And that kind of prevents your dry brushing from looking like chalky. No, I appreciate it, Seth. I'll take a look at those in a little bit. Your nemesis. We could be like Warrior Soul and do our base rims in like brown. Black is the way to go. Want your miniature to look different than the surrounding base. And I'm going to do a little more wash in between the legs on the mech just to kind of get that shadow. And a little more. Remember, your base rim's wet, so don't touch it. Yeah, those are cool. There's lots of cool ways to do it. There's not really any one way. But... Okay, the only thing we have left to do, I'm going to be careful because our base rim is wet-ish, is try to shade these decals a little bit. So I'm going to take some of that mahogany and a little black, because that mahogany is lighter than the Pro Acryl one. That's better. And I'm basically going to make a little wash for that. It's like this decal up on the shoulder. Go in there. This decal here. Just a little bit of paint across the surface of that decal, just so to kind of make it look like it fits. You don't want it to pop out like a sticker, like it was just stuck on there. Yeah, very, very thin, like glaze consistency. Alright, we do need to fix this decal on the back because I got sloppy. So we'll need some orange paint for that. And again, I apologize, but I let somebody borrow my Pro Acryl paint set to try them out, and so I don't have them today. But just the orange is fine. So we got to clean up this edge. this edge. Bottom. The stripes will still be a little off, which is okay. I mean, if you didn't like it, you could also just rub the decal off with your finger and get rid of it. But sometimes when you're decaling, it'll shift, or it'll move, or it'll get stuck to your finger, and you gotta correct it. So mix some of that mahogany in with the orange to get this bottom line. And we'll smooth it out. Doesn't have to be. Decaling is easy. Don't let it stress you out. I think it's kind of the part that makes the mech shine the most, you know? Alright, that's dry on the back. See that white 72 doesn't look so white anymore. It's got a little bit of color shift to it into some brown, so it looks dirty. Right now, if I really wanted to make things look like worn and chipped, I could chip those decals too. Which is a little harder to do like on the wolf decals because they're orange, like they're close to orange, but like, you know, if I wanted to take some of this orange paint and do a little scratchy scratch on that 72, I could. Little dot, little dot. You know, you just have to commit to doing scratches other places. But I think that does it. So that was one miniature start to finish, from primed all the way to decaled and based. You know, if you wanted to add more to the base, you could. You could add tufts of grass. You could add snow. I didn't choose to do any of that for this video series because that involved buying more product, and I didn't want you to have to buy exactly what I had because I have a bunch of stuff available. I have things from Gamers Grass. I've got stuff from AK Interactive. But if there's something you wanted to use, you could use it. But you can kind of make it your own in terms of basing. I wanted to leave it simple for this stream just so that no one felt intimidated by buying too much stuff, because you all bought a paint set for this anyway. Questions as we wrap up the stream? I'm glad, Andrew. That's encouraging. If I could help one person, that's a big difference for me. And hopefully, we'll do more of these, and you know, people will kind of dig in. The videos will get posted to YouTube when I'm done today, so that way it's ready and you can see the whole series. I do apologize. I've just been either real busy or sick the last few weeks, and I've had to cancel so many times. I'll try to commit to doing or being a little more consistent. The next sessions we're going to be doing probably just random stuff. So I've got a Davian Brigade Guard Shadowhawk that I modified to be the Rack 5 Shadowhawk. And maybe we'll do the pinstriping for that for a session just to kind of demo that and get that mini done, because it's been literally sitting all blued up on my desk for like 3 years. I got some Star Wars Shatterpoint minis that I want to start painting because I got a buddy that wants to play some Shatterpoint, and so I might paint Darth Maul on stream for a little bit and do something completely different than Battletech minis. And then I got some projects for Adepticon that I'm working on. Hopefully going to have 1 or 2 pieces in Golden Demon and 1 or 2 pieces in the Worthy, and see how I can do compared to last year. So I may stream some of those painting sessions as well. But as we wrap up this start to finish mech, any questions for me at all? Yeah, I've got the Flashpoint minis coming too. I have a problem when it comes to miniature games. I just can't stop buying them. Yeah, I'm pretty pumped for the Halo Flashpoint stuff. I got the demo at Adepticon, and it should be fun. Kind of a simple thing to play. Tips on basing, color, and theme. So I guess to summarize, like what I did here, remember the shadow color we used for this mech? I mean, I knew the color scheme I wanted was this orange and gray tiger stripe camo thing, but I kept the shadow color the entire time mahogany. And so I used a mahogany color for the base, and I hope it kind of looks like the base is tied into the miniature. I don't know if you can tell, but I mean, I hope it looks like the miniature belongs in the environment I painted it in. That is a concept called like the unifying color or the mother color. So mahogany was kind of our mother color for this miniature. Everything ties back to that shade, and so it hopefully looks like it belongs. If it doesn't, tell me, and maybe I'm just crazy, but that's the idea behind it, you know, is the mother color. And so that was what I was going for this time. But yeah, that's kind of, I try to tie the basing in to either be a contrasting color or some kind of shade color. So like this Sagittaire, I don't know if you can tell, but there's a lot of green under, I painted under the water. I used a violet as the mother color for these miniatures, so the darkest color on the red was a violet color, and so there's violets in the water also, but then there's some green to kind of contrast it, to help make the red pop out a little more, if that makes sense. What you don't want with your base is you don't want your base looking like you just stuck a miniature on there, right? You want your miniature to look like it's lived in that base and belongs there. And that kind of helps with composition for the piece. You know, if you're just doing some tabletop stuff, you just do whatever you want. That's okay. But if you're trying to kind of step up that kind of artistic level to it a little bit, you may want a little bit of kind of using those colors. So using similar color palettes and not straying too much. Let me grab a miniature to kind of explain something. So these are some Cirrus Fusiliers that I did that'll be popping on the Camo Specs website sometime soon. And you'll notice... Man, these are dark. I'm sorry. So I used a violet to shade these, and I painted the base in that same violet shadow color, but then I did something completely different on top and did a lot of bright orangey colors to kind of make a desert looking base. There's really not any orange on the miniature at all other than the dirt that I put on the feet, other than the hazard stripes having a little bit of tint to orange to them and that kind of thing. But like, they're all shaded in the violet color, so it looks like it belongs in that environment, even though the base scheme is vastly different than the miniature. Does that make sense? Like, I hope that looks like it belongs on that base. That's the idea. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. I don't want to tell you guys a bunch of hogwash, but the idea is that the base looks like the mech belongs there. Thanks for tuning in, Augustine. Or Augustine, sorry. I mean, a lot of times you just, when you're learning, you just guess and do something, and then something comes out of that, right? Like, you don't have to have it figured out every time. In fact, the more you try and the more you experiment with, the more you're going to learn. And that's kind of where you grow the most. So don't be afraid to try something different and learn, right? Cool. Any other questions at all, guys? All right, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in. This video will get posted to YouTube here pretty soon, and then the entire series will be up on YouTube. The channel is Ancient Bushido Secrets. If you're not liking and following, that'd be great. I'd appreciate a like and a follow there as we kind of build this up. We'll do some one-off streams here and there. Probably plan on starting a start-to-finish thing maybe sometime either around the holidays or after the first of the year. But I'll be posting on socials when that's going to happen. I'm not entirely sure what we're going to do yet, but I'll have maybe some polls and stuff we'll post up to figure out what people are excited about. Thanks for tuning in, and stay painting. You learn more and you do more. Take care, guys.